Welcome everybody to Fergo and the Freak. My name is the Glorious League Freak. This is episode 199 of the podcast, and I am talking to Sandy, who is a brand new rugby league fan, who is from Canada, that is currently living in Leeds, who is a massive Toronto Wolfpack fan, but more importantly, she's a fan of the Penrith Panthers. Hello, Sandy.
Hi, how are you? Good evening.
Pretty good. Yeah, we're on completely different time zones, so this will be interesting. And we got a little bit of a delay, so we'll try and work through that too. But first of all, how did you first hear about rugby league? And what did you obviously would have thought rugby is rugby, right?
Yes, rugby was rugby in my world. So the way I found about rugby league, even though I was living in England at this time, it was never a sport that grabbed my attention. The way I found out about rugby league was I was in a meeting and I had a few people text message me and try to ring me. And I'm thinking, why is everyone trying to call me? I don't understand. And somebody said, have you heard that there's a Toronto team in England playing rugby league? And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? What do you mean a Canadian team in England? Doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. Eventually I looked into it, and yeah, there was going to be a Toronto team based in England. As a huge sports fan, I've always grown up watching hockey, baseball, so they all knew I'd be really excited about this sport. And I had no idea what it was. Like I said, rugby was rugby. It kind of reminded me of like American football, but I had no idea about the rules or how it's actually played. And then eventually I went to a game. When you've got 3 kids, you don't have much time to do anything. So eventually I did get to go to a game, and I just fell in love with it. It was so fast. It reminded me of hockey. Everything I love about hockey is what I love about rugby league. And the fact that even though it's on obviously our 4th year, I still don't know all the rules. But you know what? I absolutely adore the sport, and I would die if it ever stopped. I love it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, okay, so what is your hockey team in Canada? Because we've got weirdly heaps and heaps of listeners in Canada. Like, we actually have more listeners in North America than we do in England. So who's your Canadian hockey team? It's got to be a Canadian one, right?
Yeah, so it's Toronto Maple Leafs. So I'm originally from Toronto, grew up in downtown Toronto in Little Portugal. So Toronto Maple Leafs are my team. So we definitely are a fan base that has a lot of disappointment in our sporting history. So the last time they won a Stanley Cup was when England won the World Cup. So that's quite a few years ago.
Yeah, and so you would have gone off your head when the Raptors won last year in the NBA then.
Yeah, I mean, my kids here, we all woke up in the middle of the night to watch the game. But I was so angry because I remember when Toronto came up with a competition to name the basketball team. I was in school, and the whole city, the Sun newspaper, came up with this competition to name this team. And at the time, Jurassic Park was the hit movie. So obviously that's where the Raptors idea came from. So being there and remembering it so well, how the team came about, to be in England, not to be able to be there. But what annoyed me is that I had British friends who were in Toronto to go watch the Wolfpack, and they were in the middle of it. So my friend Gary was like, look at me, I'm in the middle of the parade. I'm like, I hate you. And the Wolfpack players were all there as well. So it seems like everyone got to celebrate apart from me. So we had our own party here, but it was not the same, but it was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm a massive basketball fan, so I kind of watched the whole thing, and especially that bounce. Were you watching when you got the bounce to get into the finals? That was crazy.
Oh my God, I've never seen, like, we were watching it obviously here in England, and we screamed, and my kids were still asleep, some of them. So I'm thinking, oh my God, have I just woken them up? It was incredible. That will be a moment that will, like in other sports, there's always those moments like when Gaz O'Brien kicked the ball and we won against the Rhinos the first time. So those moments will just be always in our minds. And yes, Kawhi's not with us, but what he gave us is priceless in many, many ways.
Yeah, it was awesome. So, okay, so It's kind of weird because the Toronto Wolfpack as a rugby league team didn't exist like 5 years ago, and for them to be like, even if you'd have said 3 years ago that they'd be in Super League, there would have been people who would have said, "Oh yeah, that's a bit of a pipe dream," but they did make it. They spent a lot of money to get there, and but the problem is that it's probably been the very worst year that they probably could have entered the competition, but they're probably going to get a reprieve from relegation because of obviously COVID, which is good. I think the Rugby Football League had to do that. It would have been really unfair if anybody had been relegated at any level this year. But do you think that the way that they've been building their team towards being a stable Super League team, do you think it's going to change because of the COVID situation?
The thing is, Toronto Wolfpack are very unlucky in a way that they've not been able to get any support from the Canadian government or the UK government. So they're like in the ocean in the middle, like there's no support. And, in a way, to have someone like David Argyle, who generally has a passion for growing the sport, you need that. To have Bob Hunter, who's got an amazing sporting history in terms of what he's done to grow sport in Canada, to have him in the team is another kind of, you have the confidence in what Toronto are about and what they want to do next. I do think Toronto plays an important part in growing the sport. What we've done by having Sonny Bill and other big names linked to the team has definitely grown the profile of the sport, especially North America. You need that in order, North American sport the geography is so inundated with so many sports teams that you needed to have that big name. And yes, it was an investment, and that's what it was. Sonny Bill was an investment to grow it. And people are aware of Toronto Wolfpack and are aware of Super League because of what we've done. We are not the answer, though, to the sporting problem. We just feel we can contribute positively to the sport. And I think we have done that. Toronto didn't have 100 years to get to Super League. We live in a fast-paced world, and we have to quickly invest if that's what we wanted to do, because North Americans are used to top-level sports, and to have a new team just playing at a smaller pace, it wouldn't attract the same attention if we don't play with the top level, because that's what we're used to. Obviously, Ottawa are going to be slightly different because they've already got the Toronto doing that high-profile attraction. Ottawa can do a different approach. They can do it slowly. They want to have it more Canadian players, so it gives the good balance. But yeah, it's very, very unfortunate. And when we have amazing players like Matty Russell and Gaz O'Brien re-signing for Toronto, it really gives you the confidence that they believe that what we are trying to do is a positive thing. They had interest from other clubs, but they chose to still stick with Toronto. And I think it says a lot about the potential that Toronto have in actually growing the sport in North America.
Yeah, 100%. And it's something that, I think that the Wolfpack, and once you get Ottawa in there, and I think Ottawa will only be, I think it'll take them a little longer, as you say, but I think they'll be there within 5 years or so. We've got the team that wants to get in from New York, which I think they'll fast track them pretty quickly. It'll give Super League that North American base that it can build upon, and maybe then look towards bringing in some of the United States Rugby League teams already established and things like that, because Super League really does need to spread its wings a little bit and get some more cities involved. I've been saying for years that we need cities involved, and so having Toronto into the competition is fantastic.
Yeah, I was asked last year on a show based in Warrington about, what do I think, or what do Canadians think about some of the not so big cities in Super League, like how do you feel about playing in Wakefield or Huddersfield that might not be classed as a big city, for example, like Leeds? And I said, you know what, we don't care where we play, we're there to see the game. Now, in North America, obviously, because the model is different, the teams are in big cities, so you have the economical side there, Toronto, Boston, New York, they're huge cities, LA. So over here, rugby league just doesn't work that way. It's just how it works. So, Toronto fans won't care if you're playing against Wakefield. Wakefield is a place we'll go play. That's where the team is. That's where we play. We care about the teams that we're playing against. It's the actual sport in itself. We're not going to discriminate against where they're based. Yes, I think sport does better when it's in a bigger city because obviously that's generally where the money is. But I don't think it's going to deter me from going to go watch them as a rugby league fan as such.
Now, as you've been learning about rugby league and you're sort of
trying to.
I'm gonna give you the hardest quiz ever about the rules just now. As you've been learning about rugby league, and you'll learn about the different which teams don't like each other, why they don't like each other. And I always think that over in England, it's always funny. It seems like it's more fun with the way that they don't like one another over there. For some reason, it just seems funnier to me. Is there anybody in Super League that you really want to beat for whatever reason, or is there anyone that you don't like as a Super League club, anything like that?
It's interesting because I've always asked people exactly that question. Why don't people like Leeds Rhinos, for example, whatever. And I don't actually have one. I mean, there are certain places in Championship I would not want to go to again because I didn't have the nicest experience. But in terms of sporting thing, I think I would love to beat Wigan. I think that's the one team because I think we could have done it. It was just the last 8 minutes would have been, and they've got some nice pies as well. So I would love to go back and try some Wigan pie because I was doing a pie tour, but obviously that got cut because obviously I can't go to any more games. But I was actually trying a pie at every Super League round to see who makes the best pie. But unfortunately, that had to ground to a halt. So Wigan, I would say.
I would bet that you have been to way more Super League rounds than I've been to. I've been to, let me think, I went to the grand final and I went to the semi-final. In fact, when I think about it, I only went to Hull and Old Trafford because when I was over there, I was over there in 2006 and my team made the semi-final while I was over there and then went to the grand final as well and got absolutely tanked at the semi-final, can hardly remember it.
I went to my first grand final last year. So last year I was nominated as one of Rugby League's top superfans last year by Betfred. So they invited me and the other finalists to the grand final. And it was my first ever grand final. It was also Salford. We're in there, and it was a great story following Salford. Just as obviously because they're not a big funded club, and there was a lot of people underestimated how well they were going to do. So I really enjoyed following them just from outside. And it was great. I absolutely loved the grand final. So I would love to have gone again if it was going to be on. Yeah, I think Headingley is a beautiful stadium. I've really, really enjoyed going there. The facilities are amazing. It was cool because when Toronto Wolfpack played against the Rhinos this year, it was actually my 40th birthday. So I ended up having a party there. So even though the score wasn't great, I had such a fab time. Leeds people were very, very welcoming and very nice. But no, I've really enjoyed it. Everyone's generally been really nice to our small group of fans here, and we really do appreciate it.
And there's a really good community over there as well. Like that, I like the way that they kind of get together before games and have a beer at the pubs or wherever the local hangout is, and then go to the games. That's pretty cool how they've got that sort of culture over there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely. I guess old school. That's how they used to do it before. But Lamport is actually. Everybody wants to go to Lamport Stadium to try the beer garden. People that have gone to Toronto to watch the games just love the party atmosphere. It truly is a party from the minute you get there, and throughout the game. And then 2 hours after, the beer garden is still open and people are just, they're chilling out with players and fans from both sides. It really is a party house and people love it. It's one of those places that you have to be there to understand how different it is to the way that the British it. I've obviously been to games here, and people just go to the games and they just watch and they shout things that sometimes are unrepeatable, and then they kind of go home after that. Where in North America, when you go to sport, it generally is an event, a whole day. It's an event. When you go to Lamport, it is an event. It's not just a game. And that's what I'm really proud of what Toronto have achieved is kind of showing people that there's more to rugby league than just the game. It's the whole thing before and after.
Yeah, and it was really cool that like the crowds they were getting over there, even last year, were like they were legit crowds for anywhere in the world. Like there are NRL teams that play in front of less fans than what Toronto got to some of those games.
Yeah, I mean, Toronto fans are huge sports fans. I think there's sport in our DNA just as the minute we're born. It's just, we love sports, especially when it's high impact, like obviously rugby league. And it's taken time because Toronto is one of the world's biggest sporting cities. There's so many professional sports teams in one city that represent the whole city. So if you look at London in soccer, you have, Arsenal, Tottenham, you have different teams within the city of London that represents different groups. Now, Toronto have got professional sports team that represent the entire city. So that's quite unique. I think they've got about 7 or 8. I've lost count. So that's quite unique. So for rugby league to grow the way it has organically and with the media, and obviously Sonny Bill's really hyped the interest. I mean, they've done a great achievement. And I was very lucky that as a self-employed person, I got myself to go to Toronto for the final. So I flew in on the Friday and flew out on the Monday to be there for the £1 million game. And that was a historic game, not only from an attendance point of view, but the atmosphere, obviously the win, and the attendance. We had over 12,000, which is above the legal limit. So it was fantastic in so many ways.
Yeah, it was a real amazing event, and it's just incredible because a lot of people in rugby league, and I don't know if you've seen this yourself, but they seem a bit like they'll say, rugby league, it's the greatest sport in the world, and then you say to them, okay, let's show the world, and they'll be like, oh yeah, but really it's just northern England, and I don't know if that's going to work. And sometimes they can be a little bit pessimistic, but I think the Toronto Wolfpack have really shown if you do it correctly, people really do get involved and they love it. And as you say, it's not a flash in a pan, it's been organic, and it has been proper Toronto people. It's not been like just all expats and everything. It's been people that, are Canadians that are going to these games.
Yeah, the one thing I've always found difficult to try to understand is why people are so negative about the sport. They say they love the sport. They're happy to say I'm the biggest rugby fan, or I've been, I love the sport, but they're the first to criticize it in public. And I'm like, why not try it? I always try, let's look at the glass half full and let's see how we can make it better. Let's try to be more, bring your friends to the game. There's so many Toronto fans who've been there who've been following Toronto since the day one. They've been bringing work colleagues along who've never been. They've been really trying to bring new people to the game. And if you look at the demographics of rugby league fans here in the UK, I'm not sure about Australia because obviously there's only cardboard cutouts at the moment. Well, I know there's a mix now, but if you look at the demographics, when I go to the games here, they're very much more towards the older generation. Obviously, there are some young people. I'd like to consider myself as still young, but they are more towards the older generation. And if you go to Toronto, it's like kids, it's like 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, older people. It really is a mix. And I just think that I would love to see more positivity from fans to try to help promote the sport. And that's where my frustration comes. It's like, you can criticize. No sport is perfect in the world. NHL, NBA, no sporting organization is perfect. But I feel as a fan, we should try to do our utmost to bring some positivity into the atmosphere, the environments that we go to get other people to come along, because it generally is a good sport to watch, especially live. But negativity does not attract people. in my view.
Yeah, look, I agree 100%. And there's also, sometimes you run into gatekeeping as well. And it's like, oh, and you will have faced this. I know you will have faced this, where people will go, oh yeah, but how long have you really been a footy fan for? And I was there back in the good old days, and it turns out the good old days wasn't that long ago for them either. But I'm always of the opinion of like, try and promote it to everyone you can, and just be like, look, just see what you think about it. And if you just give them an opportunity to see what's going on, they're most likely to say, wow, this is pretty crazy what I'm watching on the field. Tell me more about it, And I agree, there's a lot of negativity about the sport sometimes from people, as you say, that say they love the sport. And I for one, I've never understood it myself, but yeah, it's sometimes people are weird like that. I guess it happens in other sports. I know it happens with UFC a little bit. There's some sports that just, I don't know, their fan bases just get negative towards expanding it for some reason. It's really weird.
Yeah, I mean, we still get comments saying Toronto don't belong here. You don't belong here. What do you know? And I've never hidden the fact that I'm new to the sport. My Twitter feed is all about things that I'm learning. It is literally a journey of not knowing what the kick is called to whatever it is. You know what I mean? So, and I think I'm trying to tell people, look, I'm new there. I'm trying to look at the sport differently to you because I don't have the history that you, but it's okay. There's no, history had to start at some point, and my history started 4 years ago. And, I think having new people can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
When these current fans, they all die, because guess what? We're all going to die. If you really love the sport, bring in, embrace new people, embrace the younger generation. I think the problem in the UK is that because sport has always, rugby league has always been a community thing, which I'll tell you, I love that element of it's been the center of communities, because when you grow up in a big city like Toronto, it's very, we don't have that, so I really love that element of it's our community. That's why I don't want to be merged with that team, because it's our community. I love that side. But then again, you have to understand that sport is now a business, and it's trying to get the balance of running the club and the team as a business where you can convince new investors to invest in the team to grow, and having the balance where you're still communicating and linking yourself to the community. It's trying to get the right balance, but a lot of the older generation don't accept that because it's different.
Yeah,
and I
100%.
see different is a good thing. It's just trying to be transparent on it. And unfortunately, rugby league, from what I'm understanding, transparency isn't one of their fortes from what I'm gathering.
All you do when people give you grief, you just say, look, your team's been around for 120 plus years, and Sonny Williams could buy it with what we're paying him. So don't worry about what they're saying to you. Sorry, go on.
Like I said, no Toronto fan and no one in Toronto has ever said we are the answer to the rugby league problems. All we have ever said is we feel we can contribute in a positive manner to grow the sport, and we generally still believe that.
Yeah, and I think that, look, I've said before, I think that the two most important teams in Super League right now are the Catalan Dragons and the Toronto Wolfpack, because it's teams like those that are the future of Super League, and anybody that doesn't understand the impact that having international teams on the teams that have been around for 120 years, like, that's the way that the league needs to go. Even if we keep those old teams, I don't mind keeping the old teams, but there has to be that expansion, because there's no competition in the world that wants to pay millions of dollars to its players that is still based in little towns. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and what I've said is, I'm going to give you this scenario. There are over 300 million people in North America. If we can convince 1% of those 3 million plus people to watch, just 1% or even 0.5% watching rugby league, watching Super League or whatever, or NRL even for that, how is that a negative?
Yeah,
And
Exactly.
no one can ever give me a reason. That is the thing is when I ask a question and it's a genuine question, it's not to say you're wrong or anything, but I'm just trying to understand if we can get 0.5% of North American population to watch rugby league, whether through streaming or whatever way, how is that a negative? And not one person has ever given me an answer that actually really justifies it being a negative, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does. And I think that maybe there's part of certain fan bases that they think if another team has something and grows something, that it takes away from their team. And I don't think they understand that, like, if the Toronto Wolfpack are an outrageous success, and then Ottawa come in and they're an outrageous success, and New York comes in and they're an outrageous success, their own team is going to go from having the sponsor being the local plumbing company to a national company that wants exposure in North America.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't understand that side of the game enough. And that's one thing that we've tried to talk about on the podcast. And because we've talked a lot about the NRL, I think NRL fans get it a little bit more. But I've found that there's some parts of the English fan base that they just don't really understand that part of the sport. And I think it's because it's so community based. It's sort of
Mhm.
there's still that mentality of like, well, you grow these things like I grow my local, A grade team down the road. You've got to build it up with your community, and it's just when you get to a professional level, you've got to go beyond that sort of thing.
But for me, it's about the future generation. People saying we're not growing enough. We don't have enough young kids getting into the sport. Now, if you're a 14-year-old and you see someone like Toronto, Ottawa, New York playing in Super League, you're like, you know what? There is an interest. I said, you know what? I might actually want to play rugby league because I might actually be able to go to Toronto or New York and play a game. It's such an inspiring thing for kids to look up to. Says, you know what? Imagine if I could become a professional rugby league player and play in a city like New York or Toronto. As opposed to, no offense to some of these places, Wakefield or Huddersfield.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's about inspiring where kids can play in the future, but also by having big names in Super League, for example, like Sonny Bill and other players who are coming into either from the NRL or the one who's joined Catalan. These players will want to make other players stay because from what I gather, everybody's moving over to NRL because that's where the big names are sometimes. Whether they play really well in NRL is another question, but they go there because something's attracting them to go there. And sometimes to play against some of the big names is quite cool to say, oh, do you know what? I'm going to be training against Sonny Bill or I'm going to be playing against Sonny Bill. Big names are what sells and what convinces the new generation to want to carry on the sports. Like football, you have the Ronaldos, you got Messi. Those are the names that inspire the younger generation to want to play football. And why can't we have that in rugby league? What is the problem with that? I really do not understand.
Yeah, and
I just think we have to do something now to get the new generation to have an interest in the sports.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think that, getting it, and it's something I think that English people don't really understand because it is a very different culture to say North America or Australia, where they kind of want to stay in their hometowns and they want to play for their hometowns and stuff. Whereas I think that say between North America and Australia, we sort of aspire to play for the city or the big team or, the glamour club or whatever it is. And so I think there's that clash of styles. And like, there's nothing wrong with either one. It's just, I prefer the one where you go and play for the big city and in the bright lights and play for the Toronto Wolfpack, quite honestly.
And like I said, when Gaz O'Brien, for example, he had other offers to play for other teams, but for him to say, I still want to play for Toronto, I think it says a lot about the potential. He's played for, he has seen Lamport, he has seen the fans, he has seen the potential. Now, how encouraging is that actually there's something good in this? I mean, it says a lot, it's not about money. It was actually, he wants to be part of growing the sport in a new market.
Mm. Yeah.
And sometimes that's what players want. It's not just about money sometimes.
Now, you talked a little bit about Australian Rugby League. You must have only, I actually saw you on Twitter saying, what NRL team should I go for?
Yes.
And now, I don't want to take all the credit for you going for the Panthers, because I know it had a lot to do with the colours of the jerseys, quite honestly, but I'm still going to accept all of the credit for you going for Panthers, even though I think I stepped in after you'd made your choice. What were your thoughts when you started to watch the NRL, and how did it compare to Super League? And were there differences that you saw yourself that surprised you, or were they very similar? What was your thoughts on that?
So I'll rewind to how I got into NRL in the first place. So at this point, there was no sport at all. And like I said before, I'm a huge sports fan. Sport is my life. And so if I could work in sport, I think I would. If I could find a job, I breathe and live sport, especially when it's live. And I then read on Twitter that the NRL was starting in May. I'm like, oh my God, some live sport. But then I realized I know nothing about the NRL. I mean, nothing, apart from some of the Wolfpack players played there. I mean, that's as far as I knew about teams and stuff. Mm-hmm. So then I thought, well, I'm going to start learning about the NRL. So I contacted fans from every single team, and I said, I'm new to NRL. Tell me what games I should watch from your team. Like, what are your team's best games? And I got over 100 recommendations, and I watched them all. Some of them were full games, some of them were the extended highlights, but I watched every single one of them because I thought surely I'll be able to pick one team that I really like. I even did TikTok. So I went on TikTok and I started doing duets with rugby league players from the NRL to see if there's anything that would really grab my attention in terms of which, because sometimes the player will be the one that attracts you to a team. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we do that. And yet I still could not find it. So I then, on the day before the NRL started, I go, screw it. I'm just going to go for my favorite color, a color I can wear because it's slimming color. So I chose black. So I went through all the teams that had black, and I thought, right, who has the slickest logo that I would wear? And that was the Panthers. So that's how I picked it. As you can see, it's very scientific. And yeah, so I literally knew nothing about the team before.
That's awesome. So what did you think when you first saw your first NRL game?
I thought it was on fast forward. I thought, wow, if I was not able to follow the sports in Super League because it was slightly slower, there's no way I'm going to be able to follow the sport in the NRL. So, and the thing is, and this is why I love Rugby League, I'm absolutely having an awesome time watching the sport, the NRL, and yet I've got no idea what's going on, especially now there's this rule change, the sixth rule change that they've had, where it's even faster than the games I was watching before during lockdown. I'm loving it. The adrenaline of watching the games and watching the teams, kind of like you can see who's the fastest players. Because it's starting to split where you can see the players have got the more adrenaline in them, and because it is fast, it's just, sorry, as you can see, I'm quite excited. It's just so much more fun. I really love the changes since the lockdown games that I've seen to the new ones. Yep. It's definitely been just super, super fast and great.
Now, is there anything you've thought about the NRL that you don't quite understand that you'd like to ask me? Because I don't know if you know this, but I'm an expert.
Hi.
Yeah. It's on my Twitter. It's on my Twitter and everything. It says I'm an expert.
The one thing I love is there's two things that I've not seen here in the UK game is the captain's challenge, mm-hmm. and the listening to the ref explain why a decision has gone through it. But what I don't understand is when can you use the captain's challenge? Because it does. I can't figure out because there was one to do with Manly a few weeks ago. I'm thinking, why didn't he use it? Is there a reason why you can and cannot use it?
Well, it's like, the coaches challenge in the NBA where if you use it but you get it wrong, you lose it. So
Yeah.
it's like that. So you only get if you use it and you get the wrong decision, it goes against you. You've lost it for the rest of the game. So
Right.
that's one reason why it might not have been used. But then you've got to do the captain's challenge within 10 seconds of certain sorts of decisions. So you can't do it for a forward pass, for instance, but you could do it for, say, a knock on, or if you knock the ball over the dead ball line, but the referee said, the referee said the opposition didn't knock it over the dead ball line, but that they did. You could challenge for something like that. But it's got to be for ones so you just can't do forward passes because it's just too hard to do with the video and all that sort of thing because the angles are wrong, and it has to be within 10 seconds. I'm trying to think of any situations they specifically say you can't use it in, but you can use it in most things. It's pretty good like that.
No, I was speaking to, I was having a chat with Eloise, so she's Darcy Lussig's partner, and I said, I'm loving this new 6 rule challenge, but I've got no idea what it is, but it seems to be really good.
Yeah.
so she was explaining to me what it was, like, I see. Yeah. And then once she told me, I thought, oh, that's clearly what I was watching, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
I just said to her, it's faster, but I don't know what the change is. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't visualize what the change was until she told me. It's like, right, I get it. But how have you felt that the NRL have managed the fans coming in? Because I've been very vocal about, say, the UK government's views on what is allowed and what you're not allowed to do in terms of the releasing of the lockdown. Mm-hmm. How have the NRL managed? Do you think that they've done a good job in terms of trying to manage new crowds coming in?
Yeah, I do. I think they've taken a softly approach, and it's worked so far. We've seen a couple of games where, and in different places, you can have more people than other places. Mm-hmm. But I think the way that they've done it has been fantastic, where the first couple of times they allowed fans to turn up, it was like 250 season ticket holders, and they'd pick them out. I think they were picking like the people that had been season ticket holders for the most number of years for the clubs, and then they've just allowed more and more as the time goes on. I have a feeling we might go back to no fans pretty soon because COVID over here is starting to flare up pretty bad again. So I feel like it's going to go back, but I think the way that the NRL's managed it, I can't fault it at all because they've really made sure that they didn't go all out early on and cause a problem. And in Australia, the problem we have in Australia is that because not many of us got COVID-19, most of us still can get COVID-19. And so it doesn't take much to flare it right back up again. And we're seeing that in Victoria right now, down the south. I think the NRL's done a good job, but I do think that we could, in the coming weeks, see them play in front of empty stadiums again and then restart in terms of bringing just a few fans back here and there.
So does that mean my cardboard cutout will last a bit longer?
That's a good question. I know that they said they were going to take them down at around 9.
I hope so, because I want to be there. I want to be there because I can't fly there. So I got my cutout because I want to be at a Panthers game.
If they allow fans back fully later on, I might have to take a cardboard cutout of you to the game. That'd be pretty funny. But they said they were going to take them to the team stadiums. The Panthers haven't played at home yet. Because I didn't get a cardboard cutout. I was going to do my League Freak logo as the cutout. And by the time I thought, I'll do it now, I realized there was only a couple of weeks left for them to be up. But I'm hoping that they do put them just somewhere in the stadium because, it's not doing any harm. It's not like the seats are being filled, No.
It's what I've loved about the whole NRL is I've met some amazing rugby league fans in Australia on social media, and they've been really helpful. And one Panthers fan, RJ, he's amazing. he got me as a welcome gift a signed jersey, Panthers jersey, which it will arrive tomorrow. So I can't wait. So it's just, everyone's been so welcoming and really genuinely wanting to help me understand and, you know, introduce me to new things or new video clips for me to learn about. And I've really enjoyed how they've embraced someone new. And it's really nice to have this open arms approach to really wanting to help a new fan. And there's other new fans as well. So that's been great. Yeah, so I can't wait for my jersey tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll be cool. You'll have to put a picture of it up when you get it. That'll be awesome to see. Yeah, look, I think you picked a pretty cool team in terms of the fan base. Like, Panthers fans are pretty chill. You'll probably notice that there's some NRL fans that are a little bit crazy, to put it mildly. But Panthers fans aren't like that. We're not like, I'm probably the most arrogant dickhead amongst their Panthers fans, and I'm not too bad when it comes to the Panthers anyway. It's more other stuff. But yeah, it's not a bad fan base, to be fair, and our merch is just the best. I mean, our jerseys just look amazing.
I mean, one thing I've really struggled with rugby league as a sport is the jerseys. I just find, because obviously North America, if you look at North American sports, they're very non-commercial, as in they don't have that much advertising on them. It's just, there's none. It's just the team logo and the name, and therefore I find them to be more wearable. One thing that's really shocked me was how much advertising rugby league jerseys have got, both in NRL and Super League, and some of them are like walking billboards. It's like, how do people wear them? I find them, you know, it's just not my style, and that's why I don't have that many jerseys, actually, because, you know, I've got baseball and I've got other North American sports, but I don't generally tend to wear rugby league because it's just too advertising in my head. So Panther seems to be a good balance, and also the Wolfpack ones are really balanced. It's got enough there that you can tell it's a rugby league shirt, but it's not too much. And I think Panthers are quite okay. They're not, you know, it's not, because some of the NRL teams are really advertising. It's just too much. It's in your so it's I'm still getting used to it, the style of what I don't like about NRL. There's no names on jersey. I struggle to know who's got what. At least, you know, it's the one thing I really struggle. So watching the Super League, watching Toronto, I've been learning about players and positions based on the players, like the Wolfpack. So if someone's trying to explain to me, they cannot explain to me just by telling me this is what this player does. They'll go, he's doing an Andy Ackers, or he's like a Gaz O'Brien, or he's like an a Sidlow. If people explain to me that way, I'll understand what they do, because I pay attention to how they play or what that position does. But if you tell me he's a number 8 or whatever, that means nothing to me. You know, it's very much. So watching the NRL is like, where is he? Like, who? What? Like, where? I can't find him now. Like, it's too chaotic that way. So it's going to be a while before I know about the Panthers players. Apart from last weekend game, I think everyone knows who our superstar is going to be soon. Yeah. It was an incredible game. You know, not a bad debut game. But yeah, it's hard for new fans not to have the names on jerseys. And I don't know, why don't they do that in Australia? Because it's a marketing. You can sell more jerseys by having a player's name, surely. Does not it work that way?
Well, I think what it comes from, I have a feeling that, say, in the UK, it's kind of a soccer thing where a player gets their number and then they get their name on the back of it. So you'll get, like, say League Freak is number 3, and that's just what it is, you know. Yeah. And I think they carried that over into rugby league over there, where you have your squad number that is generally related to your position that you play, but it's still your number for the whole season. Whereas over here, we never really had that, so you kind of had to earn your number. You had to earn that. You had to earn that fullback jersey. You had to earn that, hooker jersey, the forward jersey, and that was yours as long as you kept playing well. But the number doesn't belong to you. That if somebody below you starts playing better than you lose it. And I think it's just a part of the culture over here that we don't have the squad number sort of thing. And because to me, when I see the Super League players that, one of them will decide they want to wear number 1 and they're not a fullback. To me, it's just like, how dare he? It offends me because it's just a different sort of culture. Like, I agree with you. It definitely helps with marketing and stuff like that. But I think the thing we probably have going for us over here that if you wear a South Sydney jersey and it's got a number 1 on the back, people either they know that you are a Souths fan and you are probably either a Greg Inglis fan or a Latrell Mitchell fan, and that is attached to it just by knowing the players a little bit more. But yeah, I can see your point of view. I can even see your point of view with the jerseys looking like bloody billboards. Like, I'm the same as you. That sometimes I'll look at the jerseys and I'll be like, man, I'm not buying that. I don't want to have some lawyer's name across my chest while I'm wearing a Blues jersey. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the weird thing is when I'm talking to some fans on like Zoom while I'm watching a game, some of the players from other teams that I recognize are because I've done a TikTok with them. So I know Toby because I've done a duet with him on TikTok, and that's how I know him. So I've been trying to find ways of trying to recognize players because I can't do it during the game because it's too fast. So I've kind of attached myself to some players in terms of having an interest in a particular game because I know that player from a TikTok that I've done or something. I know it sounds silly and some people don't like TikTok and whatever, but I've had to find ways of getting to learn about the sport, and sometimes doing it in a different way is how you gain interest.
Well, look, I'm a Houston Rockets fan.
To learn about it.
I'm a Houston Rockets fan, right? And the way I become a Houston Rockets fan is when I was young, people started trading basketball cards, and I had no interest in it. And I thought I could make some money off of selling some of these cards to them. So I got a pack of cards, right? And my first pack of cards had a bunch of Rockets players on, and it had this player called Hakeem Olajuwon. And I looked at all their stats, and I was like, wow, look at the stats this guy has. It's so far ahead of everyone. And he's been my favourite player ever since. I've been a dyed-in-the-wool Rockets fan. I've watched all of their games. I'm a massive Rockets fan. So you're right. You start somewhere, and it doesn't matter where you start from. It's what you end up being. And like you obviously love the sport. It's cool to hear. Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it fell out just a bit.
But it's like, for example, there's a player in oh my god, I hope I get the right team in Warriors. Lee? Is it Lee?
In the Warriors.
Is it Lee? Is it? He's dark skinned. So his cousin plays in the NBA. Is it Lee? L-E. He got it. But when I was doing some research, his cousin plays in the NBA.
Okay, who's his cousin?
Oh my god, I can't remember. But I don't want to sound. But he's got black skin. I don't know how to.
No, it's all right.
He plays on the edge. What are those players? See, this is how much I know about the players. He plays at the edge. He's right at the end. He plays like a Liam Kay. What do you call those players? Right at the end.
The wingers.
That's a winger. He's a winger.
Okay, let's have a look.
Really tall. He's like 6'5" or something. He seems huge.
For the New Zealand Warriors.
I think so. I'm sure it's them.
It's not Edric Lee, is it?
Yeah, him. Yeah, his cousin.
He plays for the Newcastle Knights.
Oh, Newcastle Knights. Sorry, Newcastle.
It's all right.
Knights. I'm sorry for the listeners. I didn't mean to offend anybody by my comments or anything. I just didn't know how to explain. His cousin plays for the NBA. And I thought that was pretty cool. So now I watch him when when they play because of that association to something I'm more familiar with.
Do you, when you watch the Panthers, like, so you'd pick up on Kickout because of his hairstyle at the moment, which stands out like a mile. That and the fact that he's like a giant Fijian dude as well. So that he probably stands out. What other players? What about like Nathan Cleary? What do you think about Nathan Cleary?
Yes, well, I first, because like I said, before the NRL started off again, I knew of him because of TikTok. And I know that's got him in trouble. So I didn't know how good he was. I didn't really understand how much of an important player he was, and that's why I've really enjoyed talking to Panthers fans. They really have embraced me as part of a new fan, because they send me direct messages and says, look, are you watching the game? Is there anything you want me to tell you? It's really been a lovely experience of trying to learn about players, and it'll probably be another few weeks before I can understand what they all do in terms of their role in the team. But some players just stand out, like Cleary. He just stands out just because of some of the amazing things he has done since he's been back. But yeah, it's just been a great journey, and I really hope one day I can go to Australia, maybe in a couple of years, and I'll be able to actually be there for a game.
It would be very cool. The cool thing about the Panthers Stadium is it's right across the ground from the Panthers Leagues Club, which is like a massive social club. It's like a massive social club that's mixed in with a casino. It's kind of a little bit.
Cool. I better start saving up then.
There's about 1,000 slot machines in there, and it's pretty cool.
But one thing I've learned about the Panthers, which somebody actually not a Panthers fan told me, is that the Panthers have got a very good league where they develop players. They've got a very good player development where we seem to develop players that do really well in the NRL, whether they play for the Panthers or not. So I'm trying to learn about that side of the club of the team. Is why are they so successful in developing new generation of players? Yeah.
Well, because of where they're based, like they're based in Western Sydney, and they've got just a giant catchment area. First of all, it's a big catchment area for Sydney. It'll be bigger than any other club that's based in Sydney, and there's just so many junior teams, and the junior teams just all feed up to the next level, and eventually it all feeds up into the Panthers itself. So, they do. They produce more. They produce more rugby talent in that one area than I think anywhere else in the world, quite honestly. It's kind of amazing. Like, you could probably run two teams out of the area and they'd still be all right. They produce a lot of players for a lot of other clubs as well. It's just, and it's something that has just organically grown over the number of decades. They really are. So we're unlike, say, the Sydney Roosters, who, by the way, you've got to learn to hate. The Roosters don't.
I've been told I have to.
You gotta hate the Roosters with a passion. So they are a team that don't actually have a junior development league like Panthers have in eastern suburbs, and so they have to buy in a lot of their top junior talent, and they tend to buy in players. But it's like there's not too many teams like that. A lot of teams tend to develop their talent, but there are some that have to go that way of, instead of having a giant junior base, you sort of try and, sign the most talented juniors you can from other junior bases and put your junior teams together like that, who eventually one day I hope come into first grade and end up being stars for your team,
And that's what, one thing people criticize, like Toronto Wolfpack, is that you don't have any Canadian players, you don't have this. And I'm thinking, well, we've got to start somewhere. And because of, like I said, the North American League and the way professional sports, the recruits normally happen in college. and universities. That's how you kind of go through the ranks within a professional sports team now, because obviously Toronto don't have all these years, and rugby league isn't really a mainstream sport. There's no way we can recruit at top level, Canadian players. But what Toronto have done, and people don't realize, is that they've done a lot within the community. They are really trying to get the rugby league into the younger generation. So they've partnered up with local rugby league clubs in parts of Ontario, where they've had players, Ricky and others have gone and visited, these mini league, they're like 6, 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds.
Yep.
And, you have to start somewhere. So it'll probably be about 10 years before we actually have, obviously we've got Quinn at the moment, who obviously is a unique, he's got some union experience and there's history there. But to really grab a new generation of kids to then become professional, it's going to take time. And some fans don't want to give us time. They expect that Toronto will have a magical wand and create all these players, and getting NFL ex-players or, players who've never really made it through, it doesn't work that way. There was one TV show where they, I think it was in Australia, and it was about the a recruitment of the new cycle of recruitments for NRL players, and they had a guy who played American football in college, and he tried to play rugby league and he struggled. So it's not easy to convert an ex-CFL or NFL player or someone who's played American football into rugby league, because it is different. It will take time, and that's all we ask people is give us time, because we are trying. We're trying to engage with the community. We're trying to get rugby league in schools. It's going to take time, but you can only do that if you have a successful professional team there that you can look up to and say, do you know what? We actually want to be part of that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting that you bring up the gridiron players, the CFL players and former NFL players, because I think that it would have to be a real specific situation. I've always thought that you might be able to get a linebacker and they'd have to have such good cardio for a gridiron player, because gridiron players don't need to have cardio. But maybe you could get a linebacker who might be able to play as a front rower, but up front, but there's not many other situations, because they first of all, the endurance kills them. And the second thing is that they don't have the defensive instincts. That they've been brought up with completely different defensive instincts their entire sporting life than a rugby league player needs to have. And look, we've seen people that have played rugby league their entire lives being made to look stupid by other professional rugby league players. To think that somebody's going to come in just because they played a sport and be able to do better than that is, I think some people underestimate how difficult that would be for a gridiron player in particular.
Yeah, and if you look at how, say, American football, somebody did a research study at a university. I don't know, it was recent-ish, and they said that they studied something like 1,000 NFL games. And they actually calculated the full amount of actual play was 15 minutes.
Yeah.
They actually played 15 minutes. And I'm thinking, why would anyone think that an NFL, I'm not saying they can't, but it'll take a lot of training and a lot of work to be able to even be at a level where they can play and contribute positively to the team. Yeah. And it's, like I said, the endurance. One thing I've noticed with the new rule, and it's one of my concerns about introducing it to Super League at this point in time, considering we're still in lockdown in terms of rugby league, is you can tell some of the players are really struggling to keep up, constantly playing, and they're in the NRL. It's really starting to drift where you can see the players who've got more endurance than others, and you can tell it's starting to split some teams up where some players can still carry on playing and others are kind of falling behind. And that's where some teams are not winning, because they just can't all keep up at the same pace. And I think where Super League is slightly slow, it is slower. It's not got the same fast pace.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be too much to introduce this new rule where it's going to require more endurance from players when at the moment they're still struggling as it is, and they've not had proper training. Like, some teams have not even gone back into training yet, and yet they're meant to start on August the 2nd. So player welfare will come into question. Like, how good is this going to be? And I'm not an expert. I'm just talking about from a fan point of view. These are just genuine questions of, is it actually going to help? Maybe next year, where people have had proper training and so on, introduce it and get people to it. But introducing it now, I don't know. I really can't see it being a positive thing. It works for the NRL, but you've had the build-up and you do have the better players in some extent. You know what I mean? So maybe it was easy to implement, but even there you see there's a split between players who can keep up and players who can't. And like I said, I'm not an expert, but this is just a visual thing I've noticed.
No, you've nailed it. And I think the other thing was too, the break that we had over here probably ended just before players were going to fall off of a cliff in terms of their endurance, their fitness. And so we got back just in time, I think. But you can see, and one of the things that I had a concern of when they brought the rule in before the games had even been played again was that if you get one team that's just getting on a bit of a roll, they can grind the other team into nothing and just run away with it. And as you say, the other team gets so tired, there's nothing they can really do at that point. One of the things that we do try and promote over here, though, is teams getting tired towards the end of the game, because in the past we had unlimited interchange. So you know how the current interchange rules work, where you can have 8 changes in a game.
Well, vaguely, I know.
That's all right. So what we used to have in the year 2000 was unlimited interchange. So you could have 4 players on the bench. They could run on and off the field as much as you wanted. And we found that it just ended up not producing good football because everyone was still fresh at the end of the game. And so they were still able to make the tackles and things like that. And it would become a bit of a defensive slog. And so we try and play the game over here with the balance so that towards the end of the game, the bigger players tend to start to tire a little bit. And the idea is that some of the smaller, more skillful players are going to sort of take over the game at that point and do something amazing to win the game. Yeah. But it doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes you go into halftime and one team looks absolutely stuffed already, and you know that it's going to be an absolute blowout scoreline because of it. So it's it's a delicate balance. But I agree with you. I think in Super League, it could lead to some really, really big scorelines. And I don't think that's a good thing for Super League overall.
No, I just think that it won't be a good look to convince new investors. One thing that was my concern was that obviously when we were in the £1 million game and we were losing at halftime, being a Canadian who now lives in the UK and I'm pretty lucky that I can see both perspectives. I grew up in North America. I'm very familiar with the way things are done there, and then obviously now I live here, so I've been learning a lot. And when you have games where it's one-sided, it's not really convincing to investors that it's worth investing because it's too one-sided. Yep. And if we're trying to get new investors and we're showing people that actually teams are winning there's no close games, or it's just not producing the quality of the sport, it's going to be hard to bring new people to the sport where they can actually invest because there's no competition. And I'm always keen on, what can we do? That's why I say why rugby league fans are so negative. It's not going to increase more investment, because why would you want to put millions into a sports team when all you're going to get is abuse? It's not really a sellable feature. I just try to switch off when I'm at the games and just forget about some of the things I'm hearing and just concentrate on the sport. But not everyone is a sports crazy person like I am, so I'm able to kind of turn it all off and just enjoy the sport. Some people get distracted by what's around them and it puts them off, and it's trying to say, work with the teams. Don't always expect the teams to do all of the marketing and all of the advertising. You as a fan have a responsibility to get new people to the game as well. Why do people just say it's up to the team to do everything? The team should be doing this. No, actually, as a fan, your role, I believe, is to encourage new people to come along, whether it's work colleagues. I mean, I got friends who are work colleagues and they're Union fans, but I brought them to some Wolfpack games, and you know what? They'll be coming to other ones as well. They might not be a league fan, but bringing new people into the sport, whether it's for one game or a few games, it can only add to our whole sporting environment.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the other funny things too is that you'll get people that, like, you'd just like to sit them down, or like, we'll say that somebody's giving you grief at a game because you're a Toronto fan and they're not supposed to be in the league and all this stuff. But if you sat them down and you said, hey, this person and you have so much in common. You love the same sport. You love that you're both here today. It's important enough to be here today. Why are you giving them grief about it? And I don't think people understand how off-putting it can be sometimes.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, over here, I'm very lucky. I engage a lot with the expat community here. And, like I was saying to you before, if you live in London, there's a lot going on to bring people together that are from the same community. So obviously, being from Canada, there's 80,000 Canadians who live in the UK now, obviously all over the world, obviously Scotland and Ireland, but there's about 80,000. So I do as much as I can to bring people together at the rugby games, because like I said, if you live in London, there's always something happening where you can get Canadians together. But if you live outside of London, like Leeds, Manchester, Newcastle, there's not much going on. So what I've started to do is using the Facebook groups that we are all part of, say, look, I'm going to this game. It's a Toronto team. You don't have to come and just watch the game. Come and hang around with some of us. And that's what I've been doing. So I've been bringing expats with me to the games because it's kind of becoming a get together for us at some point. Some games are more popular because it's easy to get to. Like Wigan, it was on a Thursday, so we didn't have that many. But then we've had at Leeds, we had 25. So it does change, but that's okay. I don't expect everyone to come to every game, but it's just nice to have a point for us to get together. But what I've been doing, just that point about welcoming, or people welcoming, is there's a Canadian coffee chain here in the UK called Timmy's, Tim Hortons, and we call them Timmy's as a nickname. And whenever there is a game that is nearby a coffee shop, or I drive through, there is, I go and buy some donuts called some Timbits. So it's little balls that are donuts. And I'll bring a box or two, or some of my expat friends who are nearer to one will buy it. And we share them amongst rugby league fans. So I'll say, would you like one? And it's like, what is this? This is a taste of Canada at the rugby game. And so people kind of start to see that it was just a genuine, I wasn't sponsored by them. It was a genuine, give us a chance. We want to be here. Let's start a conversation, because sometimes they wouldn't want to have a conversation with us. So I thought, by bringing some donuts, my friend Jenny, and Ian, they've got Timmy's that are closer, so they'll bring them to the game if it's too far away from me. And so collectively, we're bringing our donuts to the games and kind of engaging with fans. So it's become a little bit of a thing now, but it's been great. And like I said, I just want to meet other rugby league fans to listen to their stories. I generally have met some amazing rugby league fans here in the UK where I could just listen to them all day about some of the things that they've experienced. And I just want to be able to be part of that, following the Wolfpack or whatever team, the Panthers. I just want to be part of that because I generally love the sports.
That's awesome.
As you can tell. And I do love donuts. So any excuse to buy donuts, I'll buy.
Donuts and rugby league, man, I'd be in. If I wasn't a rugby league fan, I'd be like, yeah, these donuts are bloody fantastic. I'll go wherever you want me to do. I'd stand in the middle of a slaughterhouse and I'd be like, yeah, these donuts are fucking good.
Yeah, carbs. We love carbs. Anything with carbs.
Why are carbs so good? It's like, all the carbs. Well, look, thank you for coming on. Well, I'll get you on again in the future. And what we should
That'll be
do is
cool.
we should do an episode with me, you, and Andrew where you can ask us any question you've ever had about rugby league, and we'll try to answer it like in a
That would
whole
be
history of the
super
game.
cool.
Yeah.
I do have one question before we finish,
Yeah.
which I will never get.
Yeah.
Why do some people, and this is where, when I speak to some of the Wolfpack players, it confuses me, especially when Ashton Sims used to say it. You guys say footy, and then some say rugby, and that really confuses me. Why are there two words for the same thing? Surely it's rugby. You even said it. They
Yeah.
play some good footy. I'm like, surely it's good rugby.
Okay. So basically, okay, how would I explain this? Okay, so basically, if you...
You're all awkward. That's what it is. Australians are awkward, is it?
We're all just dickheads, is what it comes down to. No, so basically, say you went to Dallas and you said, take me to the football, right? They take you to a Cowboys game, okay?
Yeah.
If you went to Barcelona and said, take me to the football, they take you to see a Barcelona play, right?
Yeah.
Barcelona FC. So basically what it comes down to is just what colloquially the people in the area end up calling football is the most popular code of football, I guess, that is in that area. So in the north of England, you have obviously rugby league is I mean, soccer is as well, but so in the north of England, rugby, if you go in north of England and say I'm going to the rugby, they'll think you're going to the rugby league, right?
Mm.
Whereas if you went down to London and said I'm going to the rugby, they think you're going to rugby union.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
But you were talking about the same sport, though. Like,
yeah.
do you?
So the sport is called rugby league, right?
Yes.
And so what I've heard it called, in Sydney we'll call it sometimes league, but we'll mostly just call it footy. I'm going to the footy, the football's on TV, that sort of thing. It's kind of like, I don't know, I guess a slang term for it, I guess is one way to put it.
So, because I didn't realize you used the word soccer.
Well, this okay.
Don't tell me it's another one where footy can either mean soccer or football, and then you got soccer, and it's like, oh my god.
Okay.
Thank God I don't live in Australia. I'll be lost completely.
How about this one, right? How about this one? My entire life growing up, the round ball football, right, was called soccer. Like I think you'd have that in North America, yeah?
Yeah, soccer, yeah.
Yeah, it's called soccer. I don't need some idiots telling me it's called football. It's called soccer. So about 10 years ago, over here in Australia, all of the people that were involved in soccer decided they didn't like to be called soccer. They wanted to be called football, right? So they started branding everything as football. So soccer over here is officially called football, and they get very angry if you call it soccer, right? But, and here's the weird thing, the national team is called the Socceroos.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And so, but then, right, on top of all of this, Aussie rules football, which is, have you seen Aussie rules football?
No, but everyone said I need to watch that.
Okay, now, it's a bludger of a game. You don't need to watch it. It's crap, right?
Okay.
But they call it football. So over here, so we've got...
There's an identity crisis in Australia, I think. I think that's the issue. There's an identity crisis.
It's all very, very simple, right? If you want to go to the football, you've got 3 different choices. It makes no sense.
So it's like... Okay. So what you're saying is that when I go to Australia, if someone ever invites me to a football match or go to the footy, I'm basically playing roulette. I don't know where I'm going to. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Keep
100%.
the adventure. It'll keep my trip to Australia a lot more adventurous.
It'll be good.
That's so cool, but so confusing.
It is confusing. It's ridiculous. There's
It kind of
no
makes sense to you guys somehow.
we somehow make it work. I don't know how, but we do. But basically, if you're in Queensland, in New South Wales, and you say, "How good was the footy last night?" you're probably talking about rugby league.
Right. I'm gonna get a map of all this.
Yeah, it's all
So
right.
I actually had to make because I was trying to figure out geographically where everybody was, and I was trying to understand why some teams hate the other. It took me over 5 hours to create a map of where all the teams are.
Oh,
and
really?
then I realized that Sydney, it's like the M62 in England. There's like a big stream of just, it's like you can just fly, you can just kind of follow all the teams in Sydney. They just seem to have a straight-ish line as well. So it was very interesting learning geographically where teams are.
Yeah.
It took me forever to get it done. I had to ask a couple of fans to cross-check my positioning of where I put teams in. And then they're like, there's 2 teams where they play in 2 grounds. Yes. That was really confusing. I'm like, who does that? Who plays in 2 completely different stadiums? Makes no sense.
How about the fact that South Sydney is in the east of Sydney?
Sorry? The South...
So the South Sydney Rabbitohs, right?
Yeah.
They are based in the east of Sydney. They're not based in the south of Sydney. And the West...
Yes, I noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, and the West Tigers, they do all of their training about 60 kilometres east of what I would call the western suburbs.
See, I thought West Tigers was west of Australia.
That's
what any normal person might think, west,
Yeah.
But then I'm like doing this map going, oh, it's nowhere near west at all.
Yeah. And then it's fun. Oh, man, I'm going to have so much fun. I'm going to teach you all the Australian Rugby League stuff.
I'll have to do another episode. It was so much fun. I'll get my list of questions because it'll be like the length of the M62 here in England, probably.
Yeah, you just and it doesn't matter how. If you're like, if you think, man, this is a really weird question, you just got to ask it. All right?
Because I'll have a lot of weird questions.
Yeah, excellent. Because there's some really weird stuff. There's like some. I love
this bit. I really would love somebody to just tell me some quirky things about it. Because I just love quirky facts about any sport. So.
Okay.
Yeah. You start writing those quirky facts. It'll be brilliant.
I'll give you one right now. You know the Parramatta Eels?
Yes.
Okay, so the name Parramatta is Aboriginal, right? And it means something like where the eels lie. So their name is really directly related to where the place is, because they've got a river in Parramatta that flows into Sydney Harbour. And so it's like not just picked out of thin air. It's like Parramatta Eels. It's a really cool name, actually.
Yeah, I did wonder, like, why would you pick eels as a logo? No offense to the creature. Yeah. It's not really one that I usually when you look at some cool sports teams and their logos, if you look at like North American sports, you think, oh, all these very cool logos and stuff, like the Panthers, it's a very cool animal. I'm thinking, why would you pick eels? It's like, it's just a really weird thing, but now I know why. There's actually a reason for it. It's a historical, like a name thing. It was just one thing, so I've learned something today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you know what the Panthers are called? Panthers, don't you?
No.
Okay. So there is the legend of, like, in the Blue Mountains and the Hawkesbury area, which is kind of the Panthers' territory, Penrith Panthers' territory, that people keep seeing sightings of a panther-like creature, right? And what they think happened was, or what the rumor is that during World War II, American troops that were based in Australia, they had their mascots, and they had a panther as a mascot. And at the end of World War II, they've got to go home. They just let them go into the bush. And so people kept on thinking that they've seen a panther in the Blue Mountains and the Hawkesbury area and all that. And so that's where the Penrith Panthers got their name from.
That is so cool.
It is,
that
eh?
is, I think I picked a great team. That is such a cool story.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll have to tell me again, because being dyslexic, I forget very quickly. So you'll have to tell me that next time. But I really like that story. That is a really quirky story.
I will, yeah. What we'll do, right? We'll get you on maybe next week if you're free, right?
Yeah. I'm self-employed. I'm always free.
Oh, that's the best. What we'll do is we'll get you on a couple of hours later so that Andrew can come on as well. And me and Andrew are just going to unload all of the weird stories and the facts.
Oh, my God. That is so cool. And then maybe we can talk about how we're going to beat our next team this weekend as well. Hopefully it'll be a good game.
Yeah, who are we playing this weekend? I keep on forgetting. Let me look it up. We are playing, hang on.
Because you're playing at home. We're playing at home. Is it Cowboys? Not Cowboys.
Where are we playing? Hang on, I'm on the NRL website. I've pressed back 15 times.
Because we're playing at home, aren't we? It's our first home game.
You're right. We're playing the Cowboys at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon.
I actually knew something you didn't. Wow, I'm impressed.
Yeah. That makes you an expert. You've got to put that in your Twitter handle now.
Because what I do is, before each game of all the teams, I watch the last game we ever played with that particular team. So I'm trying to see if there's like a history before, like did we beat them really hard? Just because sometimes there's games there where there's so much tension, and I always wonder, will that tension continue or not, and so on. So it's learning as well. I'm trying to learn again, but I always pick a team to cheer for every game, just because it makes it a little bit more fun. So sometimes, like last week, we played against Cronulla Sharks. So I said to Rick Lutele, sorry, but I'm not going to support the Sharks this week because we're going to beat you. And it's just a bit of banter and fun, and I like that, So obviously Panthers will be my team, but just, when you live in England and you're away from the NRL environment where you guys obviously have got it all the time, it's always nice to kind of have a team per game, just to kind of make it interesting, especially when you're watching and you're bantering with other people on social media. So it's just kind of a bit more fun to put kind of someone to cheer for. But Eels, I'll never cheer for them ever.
Oh, really? What's that?
Why? I don't know. There's something I don't like about the team. This sounds awful, but I don't know. And it's not because they beat us, but there was something I don't. Whether it's the logo that just puts me off, or something, I don't know. It's just never been a team that whenever. I've always gone for the team that play against them for some reason. Like I said, maybe it's the logo that just puts me off liking the team. Yes, it's superficial. I don't care what anybody says, but yeah, it's just. What about you? Do you ever support them? Ever? Like, do you cheer them on?
I don't cheer them on. When I was in high school, my friends all liked the Eels, but the Eels were absolutely terrible, and so I used to think it was very funny when they'd lose games. I don't hate the Eels. There's other teams I don't like more, but I don't know. I'm neither here nor there on the Eels. The Eels have a very nice stadium, real nice stadium.
Do they?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that, like I said, I don't hate a team. But some teams you just don't warm up to at all. Yeah. And it's not to do with the fans. It's just something. Like the Roosters, I'm not keen on their logo either. So it kind of puts me off. I know it sounds very superficial, and I'm really sorry for any genuine rugby league fans out there that are listening. But sometimes you have a feeling and you just go with it. And there's something about Eels and Roosters that, I don't know, it just doesn't click with me. But I really try to have,
The Roosters stole their logo from the French Rugby League team.
It's a really strange logo to have anyway, but...
Yeah, fucking Roosters. Bunch of cocks.
Well, thank you. So, you know what? I had so much I hopefully I wasn't too hyper because I didn't tend to get, and this is with only 1 cup of coffee as well. So God forbid if I had 2.
That's great. It's great. Well, as I said, we'll get you on next week. You can have 2 coffees, and me and Andrew will just hit you with a bunch of facts. It'll be great.
Oh, thank you so much, and I can't wait to meet, learn more about stuff, and I'll have my questions as well.
Yeah, it'll be great. So, by the way, where can people follow you on Twitter?
So what do you call it? My name or what? The handle? My handle is Sandy D Shipley 01. Excellent. So you'll see me. I have a mug that says the A Team. So you'll one of me.
And if you're on TikTok, I haven't got TikTok, but obviously you've got TikTok. Can people follow you on TikTok? I don't know.
Yeah. So the TikTok is it's a really strange. It's called Crazy Canuck Mom. That's my yes, because so Canuck, for those who don't know, is a nickname for Canadians.
Yeah. And
people here in England call me the Crazy Canadian because I'm very hyper at the games, at the rugby league games. So and I'm a mom, so it's Crazy Canuck Mom. So you'll know who I am because I only dance with rugby league players on TikTok. So. There aren't that many of me either. So, but no, like I said, if anyone does go on TikTok, I will follow you back and maybe have a duet with you as well. You never know. Awesome. I might do one with Nathan when he's back on TikTok with my jersey on once I get it tomorrow.
Yeah, I reckon you should.
You never know.
You've got to post that on Twitter as well.
Yes, that'd be great. Yeah, so I like I said, I did try to post it on Twitter because it's a bit of fun. I know it puts some people off because they don't like it, but do you know what? Life's too short. We've just been going through, and we still are going through a pandemic, and sometimes taking things too seriously is not great. So yes, it's embarrassing for my kids, but life's short. A little bit of fun.
It's awesome.
That's the closest I'll get to rugby league is dancing with rugby league players. You know, it's a desperate call. It's a desperate thing. But it's a bit of fun. Hey ho.
Exactly. All right. Well, look, thank you for being on. We'll put this episode up straight away. I'll tag you into it on Twitter and stuff so people can see where to follow you. And, thanks for everyone for listening. Thanks for coming on, Sandy.
Week.
Yeah,
I'll see you next week. Thank you. See you next week. See you later. Bye.
Bye.